Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Helen Fanucci. Helen currently serves as a Transformation Sales Leader with Microsoft, leading a team of cloud solution architects and customer success managers. She is also the best-selling author of Love Your Team, a survival guide for sales managers in a hybrid world, who has built her reputation and career managing teams responsible for billions of dollars of sales. As an MIT-trained engineer, she developed the Love Your Team system of management over a 25-year career on the front lines at top tech companies, including Apple, Sun Microsystems, IBM, and now Microsoft. Helen, thank you for joining us again on our Risk Management Show podcast.
Thank you for having me, Boris. It's a delight.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure too. We had previous interviews with you in the past where we discussed strategies for attracting and retaining talent in our age. And also we had an interview about digital transformation strategies. So our listeners can just look at the podcast about 1 year and 1.5 years ago, and or maybe just search for Helen's name in the search window to find another podcast interview. So today we will concentrate on Helen's recent book called Love Your Team. And so Helen, could you please start with difficult questions? Why there was a need in another team building book? Why did you write this book?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I observed about in the summer of 2021, July 2021, that I was doing a keynote about retaining talent, and people were asking lots of questions about managing remote employees. And companies were insisting that their employees come back into the office. And there was a lot of resistance about that amongst people who had been accustomed to flexibility and working from home. And since I've been managing remote teams for over 25 years, I thought I had, an approach and something to say that could be useful. And so I really created the book out of a desire to be helpful, but also as I did this keynote, I got so many questions that I realized that there was pent-up demand for this topic. And so that's why I wrote the book.
Mm-hmm. So can you share with us how has the hybrid world changed employees' expectations? Because we lived in this very difficult world of first COVID, now a lot of geopolitical uncertainty, and probably people have another expectation that they have 2 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So there's, of course, the flexibility. So employees have said they want to be able to work from any place, but also determine their work hours. Work's become a lot more asynchronous. The other thing is there's been people are accustomed to no longer commuting. So they've, redesigned family structures and want to be able to spend more time with family. The other thing that's happened, and it may be partly due to COVID and people thinking about what matters to them, partly due to the political unrest and the various situations happening in the world today, is that many employees want to work for companies that align to their values and have a purpose and a meaning more than just showing up and doing work. The other thing is that managers are now being asked to not only manage the work like they used to, but also pay attention and get to know their employees and the employees' expectations as whole people with ambitions worthy of that manager's support. So that's the other thing is employees are looking for managers to have a more deep personal connection with. And as the analyst group Gartner says, you may have heard of Gartner Group, that most managers in the workforce aren't prepared for these changing expectations and for managing in a way that is satisfactory to the workforce. And so there's a lot of training and a lot of understanding and new skills needed that of managers, and they're not prepared. And so that was another element of the book, is talking about the new skills that are needed for managers today to retain talent and be effective.
Mhm. So with current situation, with all those layoffs of in high-tech companies and now even mainstream companies, is it still critical to retain top talent? And what is the risks to the manager and company if you cannot retain top professional talent?
Yeah, well, I think top talent is always precious and always important to retain, and even more so now. So the reason I say even more so now is twofold. One is, if companies are laying off employees, sometimes top talent ends up being able to be laid off and they get a package, and that's usually not who you want to have laid off. So I know of people who have been able, they go, oh, I don't want to work for this company anymore, I have other ideas, and then they're able to be laid off, and that's not who you want to have laid off. The other thing is that you want to retain the people that you have left when you're laying off, because often there's more of a burden of people who remain, more things to be done with less people. The other thing too is that I've done some analysis, and at least for the sales profession, and you could draw a similar conclusion probably for other roles and profession, if your top seller, your top talent leaves, you're at risk of 3/4 of a year's worth of quota. And what that means is, if you're a manager and on day one of the fiscal year, your top talent leaves, it'll take at least 3 months typically to replace them. That's two, and let's say they have $1 million quota. That's $250,000 that you're at risk of not achieving. And then you hire somebody, and it could take them another 6 months to get up to full strength. So that's $750,000. So you're basically 3/4 of a year where you're at risk of not being able to achieve that quota. And for a manager, how are they going to make that up? And that's if the person they replace works out, and that's always a risk, right? And so managers, it becomes really a core skill, particularly for sales managers who are accountable of delivering revenue and revenue growth, that they can retain top talent that performs, and otherwise they simply can't make their quotas.
Mhm. So based on your observations, what do you think the biggest challenges are for a sales manager in the hybrid world, or what is most important for managers to do when managing remote employees?
Yeah, so what I've done in my book is I explain the 17 core conversations managers need to have. The first category is conversations of connection. So job one is to get to know your team, understand what they care about on their terms. So skills of building trust, relationship are required. And then particularly if your team is remote, which, you know, by definition, it will be in a hybrid world, developing and creating very clear outcome-based performance objectives. So for example, quota is obvious and easy. That's a hard metric. It might also be pipeline coverage, having 3 times the pipeline that you need to make your quota. Those are what I call hard metrics. But most managers, including myself, also have expectations that include what I call soft measures, such as developing stronger relationships, executive relationships with your customer, or broadening your influence and your relationships more broadly in the customer organization. And so I put that as an outcome-based performance objective. So for example, we'll meet, let's say, quarterly to review progress against that objective. And the seller will go through, where do they have relationships? Where do they need to develop relationships? And then over the next 3 months, develop those relationships. And that often includes needing the help of the manager to help get meetings with that executive. Or maybe if you're trying to reach the head of HR, you have your own HR organization head help to do a, kind of peer-to-peer relationship building, because sellers often cannot get meetings with executives. So they need help, what I call bait in the bucket, to help foster that connection point. So there's a lot of strategies around building relationships, but that's an example of an expectation that's more of a soft objective, a doing, but you can still measure the outcome.
Fantastic. So your book is for sales managers and other types of managers who will benefit, because we have in the community, we have risk managers, consultants.
This is the book, and it is available, as I said, on Amazon. The reason I made it for sales managers is to have a very specific audience, so that it has resonance. I have gotten feedback from managers and CEOs that they're making my book required reading for all of their managers, because the themes I talk about are really relevant across the board. There's a couple chapters that are focused on sales, like how to conduct pipeline reviews. Well, not everybody does pipeline reviews, but I talk about themes that are relevant no matter what kind of manager you are, and also what kind of skills are needed for working in today's world. So yes, I've gotten a lot of feedback from organizations that it's very relevant across disciplines. And I've even got feedback from millennials, the younger generation, that, boy, I wish my manager was this way, or I wondered what good management looks like, or, I'd like to be a manager someday in the future, and this helps me prepare. So I've been surprised, frankly, and delighted that it's been so well received.
Fantastic. We will put a link into the show description, so people will be able to click on it and download, purchase the book if they're interested. So great. I believe everyone will have to dive in and download this book. All right. So if we speak about performance management, so many managers do not want to do this performance management. What are the risks of not doing so?
Oh, it's such a good question. Well, first of all, you cannot retain your top talent if you don't address lower performers. And it's difficult conversations, but it's essential, particularly if you're going to have a high-performing team. Everybody wants to work on a team with very capable high performers. And so if you're not addressing the lower performers, then it creates an environment of resentment, that certain people are getting away with things or others are doing their work. And what I do is I have conversations, and sometimes it leads to a performance improvement plan where I meet with that individual weekly. And sometimes they go, you're right, this is not a good fit. I'm going to go find another job that would be a better fit for my skills. So it is a risk for the company, and it's a risk for the manager if they're not addressing low performers. Yes, it's unpleasant, but it's essential.
Fantastic. Are there any specific examples or stories in the book to demonstrate what you are trying to say?
Yeah, so I talked about how managers need to understand what their employees' ambitions are. The other theme of the book is that managers need to help their employees be successful. So let me give you an example. So leading a sales team, how can I reduce the friction of sales? How can I empower my sellers? So when we're working on a big sales deal, often we need to make investments to help that customer be successful. And so my seller puts together a proposal and seeks agreement across the company, but it will, or the stakeholders in the sales organization. But the final piece is to make a proposal to the senior sales leader at Microsoft, presenting the business case for the deal and getting approval for, it might be pricing discount, it might be investment in helping implement the technology. There's many kinds of ways we invest in our customers. So what I do is my seller is the one doing that proposal. I'm in the background with my video off, and I take notes of actions of the conversation so my seller can be present. And then what that does is that gives my seller visibility to executive leadership. It also helps build their confidence and capability in doing these kinds of presentations. And then it also gives us the opportunity to debrief. And so my philosophy is empower your team, support your sellers. And I've seen many managers do the presentation themselves because they want the visibility. And I think that that's the wrong approach. I think it limits the ability of your team to perform if you step in for them. And instead, it's much more important to empower and support your team and expect them to do the whole job and provide the coaching in the background. So that's a theme of the book, and that's an example of how I support the sales team.
All right, fantastic. That's a great examples, yeah. And maybe if we go back to your process of writing the book, I know it was very difficult because you also have a full-time work assignment to your company. So can you share with us what is your process of researching and actually writing the book? So maybe some people will benefit from it when they have an idea for a book.
Yeah, so I actually hired a book coach to help me organize my thoughts. And actually, the first thing we did is get really clear on who the audience is and what's in it for the reader and how can I be most helpful. The other thing is it became, as I reflected on what I do as a sales leader, it became clear to me that what I do is I have conversations with my team. And so then I did a little research on myself over 3 months on what kind of conversations, how often do I have them? And I distilled the book into 17 conversations across 5 categories. And it's really a how-to book, how to conduct these conversations, how to recognize the need for these conversations. And so my book coach helped provide coaching, deadlines, support. And then also I had a publishing manager that helped with all the publishing elements leading up to the final, book being released and launched by the publisher. I also decided to do an audiobook now, so that's coming out in a few weeks, I believe. I don't have a final date. I'm not the narrator, so the publisher provided sample auditions, and then I picked a narrator, so that's coming out. So I'm very excited about that as well.
All right, fantastic. That's why all my questions. Perhaps if I forgot some important questions to ask, can you please go ahead and with whatever you can benefit our audience?
Yeah, so one of the things that might be top of mind are what are the essential skills? And I touched on it briefly. And so the third part of the book is on the skills, the conversational skills managers need. So things like empathy, understanding, what your team members care about, what matters, putting yourself in their shoes, building trust. I talked about, supporting your team. I also think it's super important for managers to be able to provide context, the why behind why we're doing things. For example, sellers hate to update the CRM system, to do the administrative work. They hate that. So why do it? Well, the reason we do it is we need forecast accuracy. Why do we care about forecast accuracy? Because that anticipation of revenue is the foundation for the investments the sales organization receives. So if we're under forecasting, we're not maximizing the investments that we get to help ourselves sell, and that actually hurts ourselves. And so I don't celebrate, I don't celebrate diving catches. Know your business, forecast accurately. So that's the why behind it, context, if you will. And so I think it's really important that managers kind of have those types of skills, and they're frankly the same skills that I expect the sellers to have with customers. So I'm modeling the behavior I expect to see.
Fantastic. Thank you, Helen, once again for coming to our interview and sharing this fantastic topic. So as discussed, we will provide this interview with your link, so people who are interested can download it and use this book. So hope to see you again on our show, Helen.
Thank you so much, Boris. I appreciate it.
Thank you.